I pretended to support my sister's political career while secretly gathering evidence of her corruption. My sister had always been the golden child in our family, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Growing up in a middle-class household in suburban Ohio, she was valedictorian, student council president, debate team captain, and everything else that screamed future politician. I was just the quiet younger sister who preferred books to speeches and observation to action. When she announced her intention to run for city council at 28, everyone rallied around her campaign. Our parents mortgaged their house to help fund her run. Our extended family volunteered countless hours, and I found myself reluctantly drafted as her unofficial campaign manager despite having zero experience in politics. The first few months were actually exciting. She had genuine passion for improving our community, talking about affordable housing initiatives and small business support programs. I started believing that maybe she really could make a difference. Her charisma was undeniable, and she had this way of making everyone feel heard and valued. But something shifted after her first major campaign donation came in. A local development company had contributed $10,000 to her campaign, which seemed like a massive amount for a city council race. She was ecstatic, but I noticed she started meeting with their representatives more frequently, always behind closed doors. The changes were subtle at first. Her policy positions began shifting slightly, becoming more developer-friendly. She started talking less about affordable housing and more about economic development and job creation. When I asked about it, she brushed off my concerns, saying she was just being pragmatic about what was actually achievable. I began paying closer attention to her activities. She would disappear for hours at a time, claiming to be at community meetings or strategy sessions, but when I checked with other campaign volunteers, they had no idea where she was. Her phone was constantly buzzing with messages she would quickly hide from view. The first real red flag came when I accidentally saw an email on her laptop while helping with campaign materials. It was from the development company, and the subject line mentioned something about rezoning discussions. The email was partially opened, and I could see references to specific plots of land and promises of continued financial support. My stomach dropped. The areas they were discussing were currently zoned for low-income housing, something she had publicly pledged to protect. I quickly took a photo of the screen with my phone before she returned to the room, my hands shaking as I pretended to organize flyers. From that moment, I made a decision that would haunt me for months. I started documenting everything I could find. Every suspicious meeting, every policy reversal, every questionable donation. I told myself I was protecting our family from potential scandal, but deep down, I knew I was gathering evidence against my own sister. The deception required me to become someone I barely recognized. I smiled at family dinners while secretly recording conversations on my phone. I volunteered for more campaign duties so I could access her files and communications. I even started befriending some of her closest advisors to gather information from multiple sources. The evidence I collected was damning. She was accepting payments from multiple development companies in exchange for favorable zoning decisions. She had promised to vote against environmental protection measures that would limit their projects. Most shocking of all, she had already received over $50,000 in under-the-table payments, money that never appeared in her official campaign finance reports. But the more I discovered, the more conflicted I became. This was my sister, the person who had helped me through my darkest teenage years, who had been my maid of honor at my wedding, who called me every Sunday just to check in. How could I expose her without destroying our entire family? The breaking point came during a family barbecue about 3 months into my secret investigation. My parents were beaming with pride as they talked about her campaign, how she was going to clean up city government and make our community a better place. My dad even joked about how proud he was to have raised such an ethical daughter. I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up. The guilt was eating me alive from both directions. I felt terrible for deceiving everyone, but I also felt sick knowing that their faith in her was completely misplaced. That night, I lay awake until sunrise, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out what to do. The decision was made for me the next week, when she won the election by a landslide. The local newspaper ran a glowing profile, calling her a breath of fresh air in local politics. The development companies immediately began moving forward with their projects, and the low-income housing that had been promised was quietly removed from the city planning agenda. I watched her transformation from idealistic candidate to corrupt politician happen in real time. She bought a new car, moved into an expensive apartment, and started wearing designer clothes that her city council salary definitely couldn't afford. When family members commented on her apparent prosperity, she claimed she had gotten a side consulting job, but I knew the truth. The hardest part was maintaining the facade at family gatherings. She would talk about her work with such apparent passion, describing her efforts to improve the community while I sat there knowing she was actually selling it out piece by piece. Our parents would praise her integrity and dedication, and I would nod along while feeling like I was going to be sick. About 6 months after the election, I finally found the courage to confront her directly. I asked to meet her for coffee, planning to give her one last chance to come clean on her own. But when I hinted at what I knew, she became defensive and accusatory. She claimed I was jealous of her success and suggested I was trying to sabotage her career out of spite. That conversation convinced me that she was too far gone to save herself. She had rationalized her corruption so completely that she genuinely seemed to believe her own lies. The sister I had grown up with was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I spent weeks agonizing over what to do with the evidence I had collected. Going to the police felt like betraying my family, but staying silent felt like betraying every person in our community who had voted for her based on her promises of honest government. The decision was ultimately made for me when I discovered she was planning something even worse. Through my network of sources, I learned that she was working with the development companies to rezone the city's main park for a shopping complex. This was the park where we had played as children, where our parents had taken us for picnics, where generations of families had created memories. That night, I copied all my evidence onto multiple flash drives and wrote a detailed summary of everything I had discovered. I included photos, audio recordings, financial documents, and a timeline of her corruption. I even included my own confession about how I had gathered the information, knowing it would probably destroy my relationship with my family forever. But I couldn't send it to the authorities. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to be the one to destroy her career and humiliate our family. Instead, I decided to try one more approach. I created an anonymous email account and sent copies of everything to 3 local journalists, including one who had written several investigative pieces about corruption in nearby cities. I figured if the evidence was compelling enough, they would investigate further and expose the truth without it being traced back to me. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I started to think the journalists had ignored my information or decided it wasn't credible. Then, on a Tuesday morning, the local newspaper's website published a bombshell investigation titled City Council Member Under Investigation for Corruption. The article detailed everything I had discovered and more. The journalists had used my evidence as a starting point and had uncovered additional corruption I hadn't even known about. They had interviewed former employees, analyzed financial records, and even obtained recordings of phone conversations between my sister and the development company representatives. The fallout was swift and devastating. Within hours, calls were mounting for her resignation. The state attorney general announced a formal investigation. The FBI raided her apartment and office. Our parents' phone didn't stop ringing with calls from reporters and neighbors, wanting to know what they knew. I watched it all unfold from my own apartment, feeling a mixture of relief and horror. Relief that the truth was finally out, but horror at what I had set in motion. The woman being led away in handcuffs on the evening news was still my sister, regardless of what she had done. The family dinner that Sunday was the most awkward and painful experience of my life. My parents were devastated, alternating between defending her and trying to understand how they had failed to see the signs. My other siblings were angry and confused, demanding to know how none of us had suspected anything. I sat there nodding along with their shock and confusion, playing the role of the supportive sister who was just as blindsided as everyone else. The guilt was overwhelming, but I told myself I had done the right thing. Our community deserved honest government, and the people who had trusted her deserved to know the truth. The investigation revealed that her corruption was even more extensive than I had realized. She had accepted over $200,000 in bribes, had violated multiple campaign finance laws, and had used her position to benefit herself and her associates at the expense of her constituents. She was eventually sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Our family fell apart in the aftermath. My parents, who had mortgaged their house to support her campaign, faced financial ruin. The shame and embarrassment drove them to sell their home and move to another state. My other siblings blamed everyone except her, convinced that she had been set up by political enemies. I never told anyone the truth about my role in her downfall. As far as my family knows, I was just as shocked and heartbroken as they were. I attended her sentencing, sat in the gallery with tears in my eyes, and played the part of the grieving sister perfectly. But the secret has been eating away at me for over 2 years now. I wake up some nights wondering if I did the right thing. She was corrupt, yes, but she was also family. I destroyed her life and shattered our family, and I'm the only one who knows the truth about how it all started. Sometimes, I wonder if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have confronted her earlier, before she was in too deep. Maybe I could have convinced her to withdraw from the election, or to return the illegal money. Maybe I could have found a way to stop her corruption without destroying everything. But then I remember the park she was planning to sell, the affordable housing she had abandoned, the trust of the voters she had betrayed. I remember the developer meetings, and the secret payments, and the lies she told to our parents' faces. I remember how she had looked at me during our coffee meeting, how she had dismissed my concerns and accused me of jealousy. I did what I had to do to protect our community from someone who was supposed to serve it. The fact that it was my sister makes it more painful, not less justified. Sometimes doing the right thing means making impossible choices, and I've learned to live with the consequences of mine. She's scheduled to be released next year, and I don't know what will happen when she gets out. Will she figure out that I was the one who exposed her? Will our family ever heal from this betrayal? Will I ever be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling like both a hero and a villain? I've never told this story to anyone before, but I needed to get it out somehow. The weight of carrying this secret alone has been crushing, and I hope that sharing it, even anonymously, might help me find some peace with what I did. I pretended to support my sister's political career while secretly gathering evidence of her corruption, and I'm still not sure if I'm proud of that or ashamed of it. Maybe I'm both.